Hi guys, welcome to part 2 of the Mode MZC training on aldusacademy.net. In this particular training video, we'll be showing you an overview of the EZTools programming software. The EZTools programming software is a software that you would use to program the MZC, and let's open it up now so we can see exactly what it entails. So I'm just opening it up now, and the first thing that you are asked to do is select an IR database. This is because the MZC has been around for many years and there's a few variations, specifically 2 variations in the IR database in which it uses. Now this is referring to the IR commands used for controlling the MZC itself. So generally speaking, the newer IR database is installed inside units that contain an inbuilt fan on top of the unit. You can spot if an MZC is an older unit because it will not have the inbuilt fan. If you're unsure as to whether or not to use the new IR database or the old IR database, feel free to contact support at Aldus Systems, either via the sales account, which is sales@aldussystems.co.uk, or by picking up the phone and giving Aldus Systems a call. All the contact details are on the website www.aldussystems.co.uk. For this overview, I'm just going to click on New IR Database, and EZTools loads up. This is blank EZTools without any projects open at the moment, and at the top left here I have the option, some quick shortcuts for selecting a file type or the type of device of which I'm the target device I'm programming for. But let's click on File, and you can see that without a project open I have a few less options. So we're going to open up a project and you'll see that all of a sudden I have more menus at the top and I have more options to play with. So if we select File and Open, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that there are certain templates that you may wish to use and customize. If you're to start from scratch each time, you may be wasting sort of vital programming time, whereas if you select an MZC66 default template, you'll have a lot of programming done for you already, ready for your customization, so that you can tailor it to your specific project's needs. So let's open the MZC66 default. The MZC66, I would imagine, is the device which you would program the most for. It is the current MZC model, and once opening it you can see that I've got some sources assigned and some zones. We'll get into the specifics of this in a moment, but before we do so, let's just take a time to orientate ourselves over the menu structure that we have at the top of the EZTools software. So of course I have the generic sort of file and edit menus. I won't spend too much time on these because, as you can see, you can just load up a new project, open a pre-existing project or a template as I've just done. You can close this project down. You can save it, save as, if you want to increment the file name so that you're not saving over any changes. You can print the screen if you wish, or you can select a recently opened project. Let's quickly have a look at saving the project. If I go to save it, I do not want to wipe over my default as I do the program, so I'd probably save it quite early on. I'm going to save this as training and select save. I'm showing you this now in particular because of this particular message that pops up. As you saw, when I first opened the project I was prompted to choose a new or old IR database. In doing so, as I go to save, there are 3 digits which are being prepended or appended onto the end of the name. So 401 indicates that this is the new IR database, whereas if it had the digits 313, then it would indicate that's the old IR database. This is just so that at a glance you can see which IR database your project is programmed for. So I can select OK, and you'll see that 401 has now been appended to the end of the name. So let's have a look at the other options that we have via these menus. I have the generic sort of undo and redo features, also mapped to Control Z and Control Y as you would expect. I then have project specific information. I can save information about my client, such as his phone number, his client's name, and the date. That's very useful for ensuring that you know exactly which project or which customer each project's for, and if you ever lose their contact information you can save it within the project. You've got check project's memory usage. As I've mentioned, there's different variations of the MZC, and different variations have different sizes, and there's effectively an infinite amount of data you can put, or a finite amount of data that you can put onto an MZC. So if you want to double check to make sure the project you've created isn't too big for the target device which you are going to download your programming to, then check project's memory usage is how you do that. It's similar to this option under MZC 66, which offers verify to current project. This just makes sure that the target device you're about to upload to can accept this in particular project. For instance, if I programmed it for an 88 and I was connected to a 66, this would prompt me and tell me that I'm connected to the wrong type of device. I also have this download option. This is how you download your programming from EZTools onto your target device, such as in this case the MZC66. Please note there is no upload feature. I cannot extract programming from an MZC66. It is a one-way implementation. So I design the program within EZTools and then I download it to the device. This protects your work as an installer, as this allows for, it means that when you program the system, only you have the original program, which means you are required if changes are needed. Now that means if you're visiting an existing SpeakerCraft install where it's been programmed and you're required to make a change, you may be required to reprogram the system from scratch. However, since as it's in the name, EZTools is a particularly easy software to get along with, so due to the workflow which I'm sort of going to teach throughout this training course, it won't take you very long to recreate a program. So let's click on the next option, which is Tools, and here you've got Get Product and Firmware Version. This tells you the firmware version and the product information that you're currently connected to. When I say connected, I mean via a USB to serial lead, and then plugged into that USB to serial lead is the DB9 transfer lead. This DB9 transfer lead plugs in to your USB port, and you can scan your USB ports by the settings option. This is necessary before reading the firmware or product version, or updating the product's firmware, or even downloading any programming to the particular device. So if we select settings, I can then auto detect. It's good practice to do this regularly, particularly before downloading to the device, otherwise you may get an error message saying there is no device connected. You've also got auto save options, where you can set it so that the program will auto save itself after X amount of time. And I've got one or two other options in terms of how it learns IR, and audio feedback in terms of beeping. It's really for your own personal preference. I could turn that off if I wish. I'll leave that on. Now once I've connected, in this example today I am connected to an LTM Learn Test module, which is a vital tool for any mode installer, as it will enable them to learn additional IR commands or test IR commands or RS232 commands. I can select Get Product Firmware Version, and I can see that it's read the type of device I'm connected to and it's told me the firmware version. If I wish to update the firmware, I can just click on Tools and Update Products Firmware. You may need to install all the firmware files for all the various mode devices. These can be found on the All the Systems website. If you just click on SpeakerCraft, Useful Information, MZC Programming Software, you'll find that there's a file you can download called Firmware Updater. This contains all the firmware files you need. All you need to do is run it and they will appear in here. Once clicking on this option, there's a wizard which will guide you through the firmware update procedure, which is fairly self-explanatory. If we click on View, we can have the option to hide a toolbar. As you can see, that has disappeared. It will reappear in a moment. And we can also hide the status bar, which shows us if we are connected to any devices, and also shows if the project has been modified since the last time it was saved. There you can see I no longer have that status bar. Here we have the Help option, which has a plethora of useful information in regards to programming EZTools, and there's just some information about when it was built, not in 1913 but in 2004, and the current version that we're on. So that's the menu structures at the top. Now on the left here, this is where you'll do most of your programming. Inside this project content button or tab, you'll see that the content is specific to the project. So this is where you assign your sources. These are physically where these sources are plugged in, and then you create your zones, you add your keypads to your zones, and you can rename your zones as you wish. I'll get more into the specifics of how to use all of this. I'm just intending this to be a quick orientation to show you where things are. I've got an events setup tab, which allows me to do certain events or trigger certain commands when certain events happen. So if I click on zone 1 turning on, I can see that there's a command here. Now this is here because I'm using the default template. If you find that these aren't here, it's because you're not using the default template. But in the default template, I can see that zone 1 turns on to a preset level of -45 dB. That is quite useful, so if I turn the zone up quite loud and turn it off and then back on again, it will come on to -45 dB. There's a lot of programming you can do within this event setup tab, but we'll get back into that when we come to program a real program in a following lesson. So that's the project content, a very quick overview. But a few important tabs that you will need to use from time to time are these command library and MZC commands. So the command library is for third-party devices, such as, say for argument's sake, I wish to control a Samsung TV. I could just type in Samsung or Sam and then scroll down, and then here's various different types of Samsung devices. The example I've just given is controlling a Samsung television. So if I click on this plus, I can see there's various code sets. This is why the LTM Learn Test module is a vital tool for a mode installer, as it enables them to test these commands without having to physically connect to an MZC or waste time uploading a program to an MZC just so that you can test the command. This will allow you to test the commands on the fly. I can also use the LTM Learn Test module to add commands to my EZTools library. I can also export commands out of my EZTools library and re-import them at a later date. Now, the difference between the command library and the MZC commands is that the command library is for devices that live outside of the actual MZC main controller unit. The MZC itself has its own specific commands, such as turning a zone on or turning a zone off, selecting a source within a zone, which will also turn the zone on, which is why there is no specific zone on command. If you wanted to turn a zone on, you would call one of these source selection commands, or turn the zone off. Now, we also have commands for audio levels, such as volume up, volume down, or setting it to a preset level. As you can see in this example of zone 1 turning on as an event setup, it's set to -45 in zone 1. This is how that would have been done. Someone would have clicked on here and then double clicked on the actual command that you wanted to add. That concept is the same whether or not I'm putting a command onto a button or onto the event setup. But don't worry, there's plenty of time to get into how to assign commands to buttons and things like that. I just wanted to show you that it's not drag and drop, it is a double click once the target place is selected. In addition to audio level commands, I have tone commands. I can select if I want to turn the bass up or bass down, or make the bass flat in a specific zone. The same is true for the treble. Fairly self-explanatory, so I'll move on. The audio routing commands do not power the zone on, but they just route the audio to that zone, as opposed to the control commands, which will turn the zone on as well. Video routing commands. As I mentioned earlier, the video routing and audio routing are completely separate matrices. So here I can independently switch the video from the audio. I have also options for controlling the inbuilt contact closures, so I can make those contact closures open, close, or close for just a toggle, or a momentary close. A toggle is latching, and a momentary is as the command is sent. So that's the MZC66 commands. But what if we wanted to control an iPod dock, which is made by SpeakerCraft? As you can see, there's no options here for doing that. So I'd click on command library, and although it's made by SpeakerCraft, it's still a device which is external to the main processor unit, the MZC itself. So I just click on SpeakerCraft, and the mode docks are a mode device, so I can expand mode. And if I expand mode base, you can see that I have all the commands for controlling the iPod dock. So that's where you would get your commands. You can always add more commands if you wish. The button bucket is for customizing what the keypads look like within EZTools. This is just so that they look the same as they do in real life. And what I mean by this is there's different button packs, so you can actually put different buttons onto your keypads, as this is an extremely customizable solution. So you may from time to time require buttons that differ from the default button arrangement. So in the button bucket, once I have a keypad selected, I can change the buttons on that keypad. Let's jump back to the project content and quickly have a look at these keypads. I mentioned this several times throughout this training course, but if you want to control the system from a third-party control system, you will need Mode 3.1 keypads programmed into every zone. Even if they're not physically in the installation, you'd still program them into the zone. The same is true if you wish to control it from a Mode 3 keypad. In terms of when it's undocked, you'll be able to control all the zones. You would need a Mode 3.1 in all the zones in order to do that. The same is also for the ERS one, which is the SpeakerCraft web server. That requires Mode 3.1s in every zone. Let's have a look at these keypads. When I first click on a keypad, you'll notice that these windows are on top of each other. Let's just take a moment to quickly move them into positions where we feel comfortable. The reason why I'm taking this moment to quickly do this is I've recently reinstalled EZTools to show you what it's like when you open it for the first time. When you open it for the first time, it will install these devices or open these windows on top of each other. If I take a moment to reposition them, I can even resize them. Now when I click on another keypad, it's going to remember these positions. So these positions, the last used positions, is how it will open in the future. So this is why I say take a moment to position this in a way that you feel comfortable, just so that you are not missing any information. So this is the Mode 3.1 keypad. The button colors are relevant, as I can see here that there is a command programmed to the specific button. If I delete the commands, you'll see what a button looks like when it's not programmed. It goes dark grey. So this dark grey is an indication that there's no command associated with this button. And this button properties window shows me that. If I click on this button here, I can see a little asterisk followed by a command, which I know now is brought from the command library, and this specific command can be found just here. So I open the mode base and menu down 5%. So if I wanted to reapply what I've just deleted, I could click here and select menu up 5%. I double clicked, I selected the button I wanted to use, and I double clicked. These arrows indicate the direction in which this rotary volume wheel is being twisted. So in a clockwise fashion, zone 2's volume will go up. That's because I'm currently in zone 2. It's crucial to note that if I was to put zone 1 volume up, I'll get a pop-up saying zones are not permitted to control other zones. If this was a mode 3, I could undock the dock, select which zone I wanted to control, and then happily control it. That's why I need a Mode 3.1 programmed into every zone, even if it's not physically there. These source assignments, or these button assignments, are specific to each source. So I click on CD and you see that these disappear. That's because typically there's no way of knowing what make and model and code set your CD player is, so these buttons have been left out of the default program, as opposed to the iPod, which we know is going to be a mode iPod, so these buttons have been included in this program. So that's the first look at the keypads. Let's move over and have a look at the other type of keypad that you may have. You may have an EZPad such as this, or one of these. So as you can see, it's the same concept applies. The dark grey buttons have no programming applied, and the light blue or light grey buttons have programming applied. So I click on this and I can see that's going to switch the audio and the video automatically for me. I did not need to apply that because I'm using the default program once again. If these commands aren't there, you will need to apply them. So if I click on mode 3.1 again, now you can see I have dark grey buttons and I have buttons that are circled by green. That's because they have a default program associated to them. or default functionality associated to them, I should say. So let's click on this particular button here and right click on it. We can see that this is a zone power off key. The same is true for the EZPads. I have certain buttons which are circled or outlined with a green circle. So that's programming the zones. Up top here we have the source assignments. This is typically done first. You would typically assign your sources. Now there's one or two things to bring to your attention here. According to which drop down menu is selected, you may see additional options appear on the right hand side. So when I select this drop down menu and select DVD, there are no additional options. But if I select iPod 2, you'll see that I now have additional options. These options will appear when it's any mode device. Mode devices have little scroll wheels, so I would physically tell it which position that scroll wheel is fixed to. And just here I can actually choose whether or not I want an additional source input. The mode bases actually have an auxiliary in on the base itself and the adapter. So I could choose to use the base in and name this aux in. Whatever I name it is whatever it will appear on the keypad. Appear as, I mean. Now, we have the option for a custom name and a description. So the description is just purely for your use when you're programming, whereas the custom name, this is what will appear on the keypad. It's often beneficial to leave an iPod blank so that it hasn't got a custom name. That way, when there's nothing docked, you will see the words not docked. Also, when there's something docked, it will show you the name of the iPod of which it's docked inside the dock. Now we've also got the DVD options, but let's move this over to, say for instance, a tuner. There's specific tuners that work with the MZC, so you may wish to select that tuner and the address of which the RSA1 is set to. Moving back just very briefly to the iPod. If the words iPod are displayed on the actual keypad itself, without anything being written in the custom name, then what that's indicating is there's no connection to the iPod base. So if your screen ever reads the word iPod and not docs or not the name of the iPod, that means that you have no connection to the base. So that's a very useful way for troubleshooting purposes to see if the physical connection is there. Let's have a look at some other mode devices that give you additional menu options. I can select a type of media server. These are media servers that offer two-way integration out of the box. I can select the address of the RSA1, which is the RS-232 bidirectional RS-232 port for controlling these media servers. Apart from the mode specific options, it doesn't matter too much which one you select here. You could just name all of them. You could select all the source types to be auxiliary and then just name them as you see fit. So this could be named Sonos for argument's sake, or request. So now I've named my source, so if I select apply, it's warning me that these sources are used in other zones and asking me if I still want to continue. I've selected yes. So let's have a look now on a keypad, and you can see that I've got additional auxiliary input. That's for the iPod because I selected that in the drop down menu. This one has renamed itself request, whereas these ones are using the default names because I haven't put a custom name in. No custom name means it diverts to the source name. This one in particular said request because I named it request, so it's overwritten aux with request. Cool. I just want to bring your attention now to this miscellaneous tab. This miscellaneous tab is where you would select a standalone, a master or a slave, multiple slaves, or 3 slaves and a master, which is a total of 4 units, in this case providing 24 zones. This easy code is where you select the command protocol used for controlling the MZC. And here you can select whether or not it's listening for its paging input to be the doorbell or the status in jack. You can also select how long it listens or switches to that input for once input is selected or sensed. Cool. That concludes the quick run through. Obviously there'll be more information coming up shortly in the following presentations, but this was just intended to be a quick overview of the EZTools programming software. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you soon on the next episode.